Do you know what percentage of players who finished in the top 5 of the MVP race in the last 5 seasons are American? Come on, take your chances. I'll give you a hint. The last time there was more American players than international players in the top 5 of an MVP race was 2020. A race that ended with LeBron James in second place and James Harden in third. Yeah, a lot's really happened since then. Only 40% of those top 5 spots in the MVP race have been filled by American players since 2018. Not only have the last 5 MVPs been won by players born outside of the USA, but the players who have come close to winning the award have mostly been foreign. Last season ended with Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jayson Tatum, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the top 5. Only the second time in the entire history of the league that only one US-born player appeared in the top 5. The first, the season before in 2022, with Booker replacing Tatum. But what seemed like an anomaly is happening again. Currently, the top 5 positions in the season MVP ladder are occupied by Jokic, Doncic, Embiid, Tatum, and Shai. This graph is the reality of an NBA that's importing more and more talent from all over the world, and whose top representatives are beginning to have the same trait in common, which is the fact that they're foreigners. A generation of players with unimaginable talent that's coinciding with a transitional stage of the American talents in the league, in which the generation of players that have dominated the decade of the 2010s are reaching the final stages of their careers. Since the 2018-2019 season, which coincided with the rise to superstardom for a certain Greek forward and a certain Serbian center, the tables have seemed to turn. International basketball is literally taking over the best basketball league worldwide, which is also turning out to be a much faster process than one might expect. But come to think of it, is this true? Let's take a look at some data to try to deduce some of the reasons for this transformation that the league's going through. And what better way than analyzing that funnel that allows new players to enter the league, the NBA draft. This chart shows the number of foreign players drafted each year in June, and really, we can draw very good conclusions from it. If we go back to the 1990s, we can see how neither scouts nor general managers had much confidence in international players, taking into account that the drafts of those first seasons of the chart were composed of 54 players until 1995, where they become composed of 58 by the expansion draft of Vancouver and Toronto. We can deduce that only 8% of the players drafted between 1990 and 1995 were not Americans. A percentage so low that it wouldn't be repeated, since during the 2000s, the trend changed completely. A great generation of international players made up of names like Dirk Nowitzki, Pau Gasol, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, or Peja Stojakovic showed that international talent had the potential to reach star status in the NBA. And drafting Europeans became a trend that franchises couldn't resist. From 2003 to 2006, the international hype era reached its peak. As many as 91 foreign players were drafted over just 4 seasons in the league, which meant the arrival of 38.1% of international talent in the NBA. And although the numbers are not usually that high anymore, with the exception of drafts like 2016, which included no less than 28 international players, or what's the same, 46% of the draft, the trend of drafting foreign talent has remained very dominant. But as we can see, this takeover process is not something recent. Since 2000 to now, practically a quarter of every draft has been composed of international players. Basketball borders have been open for decades, and the globalization of the NBA market has enabled 2 vital aspects. While the league has had a great influence on younger generations from all over the world, bringing basketball to every corner of the globe, this new market has allowed it to multiply its profits and offer the best possible conditions. The best players in the world are in the NBA because the league offers exorbitant salaries compared to the rest of the world. And the difference is so big that it has always been, is, and will always be that way. Although, well, all soccer fans know that Saudi Arabia is capable of anything crazy, so I guess never say never. But let's get back to the beginning. The dominance of international players in the MVP race and the NBA is a trend that, as we've observed, is changing the landscape completely. But what's scarier is the future. It seems that the USA is failing to generate enough players capable of elevating its representation among the world's basketball elite. Of course, there are the cases of young players with the potential to win multiple MVPs during their career, such as Jayson Tatum, Anthony Edwards, or De'Aaron Fox, but some of their best prospects have been mired in controversy and issues outside of basketball, such as Ja Morant or Zion Williamson. In any case, the competition seems to be really tough. The last 3 NBA MVP trophy winners are players who are in their prime right now. Giannis Antetokounmpo is 28, and he's back for an umpteenth season at the highest level, in which he'll probably end up getting his 6th consecutive All-NBA first team. A generational player who has managed to become a unicorn in a completely different way than Nikola Jokic. The Serbian center has managed to become the best passing center in the NBA and probably one of the best centers in history. After winning his long-awaited championship with Denver, his team is the team to beat. And Joel Embiid is a regular season monster who's averaging 31.8 points per game over the last 3 seasons and needs to finally get a good playoff run to add to his legacy. 3 players who, every season, you know are going to get astronomical averages and lead their team to a very good record and good playoff seed. But besides having to compete against this 3-headed monster, other players like Luka Doncic or Shai seem the most realistic options to reach an MVP award. This is the tier of Jayson Tatum, who's probably the American player with the most potential to win the MVP. Luka's having an incredible season on a Mavericks team that have a 10-5 record after the disappointment of a few months ago, and is averaging 30.6 points, 8 rebounds, and 8.1 assists per game with the best efficiency of his career. A season that makes him one of the top favorites to win the coveted award. Shai, meanwhile, is once again performing above expectations on a Thunder team that, to no one's surprise, is enjoying another breakout season with a conference-leading record that should allow him to be in the conversation. But it's not only the present that's dominated by international players. The European prospects currently in the NBA are top quality and look capable of being able to pick up the baton when it's their turn to do so. Players like the French center Victor Wembanyama, who, despite having a few complications in his first few weeks in the league, is continuously showing signs of enormous potential, or Alperen Şengün, the Turkish center who's being one of the main reasons for the spectacular performance of the Houston Rockets during this early season. A player who, as we've said on many occasions, is quite reminiscent of Jokic in his style of play. The disappointing performance of Team USA during the last World Cup went viral, in part thanks to Noah Lyles, who always had his share of reason. And it looks like Steve Kerr and company have called up their team of Avengers who will form the new Redeem Team and should dominate at the upcoming Olympics in France. A generation of players that will scare anyone, but the reality is they won't be around forever. In fact, this next tournament will probably be the last dance of this historic bunch. But it is curious that in FIBA basketball, the game is so different that it's able to dislocate players of great reputation in the league. Brandon Ingram is a perfect example of this type of dynamic, averaging 5.7 points and 3 rebounds per game during the World Cup compared to the 24.7 points and 5.5 rebounds he'd posted that season with the New Orleans Pelicans in the NBA. His confidence was shattered. Confidence that other players, however, such as Dennis Schroeder, saw multiplied despite being a much smaller name in the NBA. Now, should the NBA be afraid of this? Economically, the league's taken advantage of the situation to extend its empire to the European market, a continent that loves basketball and that increasingly has more and more fans of the best league in the world consuming its product. Its hometown heroes have become some of the best-known faces in the world, and future generations use their influence to pursue their dreams of professional basketball. But behind it all, there's honor. The United States has always been the owners of basketball and its influence, despite the fact that the sport was invented by a Canadian, and the sentiment that spread around the world. The unbeatable team, the dream team that no team was even capable of competing with, and that has won gold in every Olympic Games since 2008. So in reality, these international superstars should only push Americans for the betterment of the game and future dream teams.